Picture this: Chicago, 1994. Before the castles, before the tiaras, before Meghan Markle was splashed across every magazine cover in the world, there was Joe Giuliano. He wasn't a prince. He didn't have a crown, a palace, or a title. He was just a regular guy, decent, respectful, raised in a deeply traditional Italian-American family who believed in family dinners, Sunday prayers, and loyalty that ran deeper than blood. And then came Meghan. Their story started like something out of a teen romance, a whirlwind of laughter, charm, and late-night talks. But oh, if only they'd known. It would become one of the quietest, erased chapters in celebrity history, because what Joe's family saw behind those closed doors, it shook them. Those close to the Giulianos whispered that Meghan wasn't what she appeared to be. They saw ambition in her eyes, not the innocent kind. It was sharper, cold, calculated. She wanted something bigger than Joe, bigger than Chicago, bigger than their quiet dinners and steady love. She wanted the world, and for the Giulianos, that was enough. Enough to end it, enough to erase it, enough to make sure no one would ever know that once upon a time Meghan Markle was Mrs. Joe Giuliano. Before there was royalty, before Hollywood lights, there was a small chapel in Las Vegas. No flashing cameras, no grand ceremony, just Meghan and Joe promising forever in front of a sleepy minister. No one talked about it, no press ever found the photos, because within months it was over as if it had never happened. Records sealed, family silent, and Meghan, she moved on like the marriage never existed. But the question that's haunted those who knew them remains: why the secrecy? Why would two young lovers hide a marriage like it was a crime? Those who knew Joe said he was a simple man, humble, grounded, respectful. But Meghan, she had fire. She wanted more than love. She wanted recognition, fame, influence. And Joe's family saw through it fast. The Giulianos started noticing little cracks, stories that didn't add up, timelines that shifted like sand. She said she'd graduated in '94, but school records suggested otherwise. Some even whispered she was older than she claimed. Not born in 1981, but possibly in the late 70s. If that was true, she wasn't a wide-eyed girl swept up in romance. She was a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. Joe's mother, protective and sharp, sensed it first. She was too good at pretending, one insider said, too smooth, too practiced. Behind that dazzling smile, they saw something else: control. Behind the charm, strategy. And that's when whispers began inside the Giuliano home. She's not who she says she is. To understand the storm that followed, you have to understand who the Giulianos were. They weren't rich or powerful, but they were rooted. Family meant everything. Every Sunday they gathered around the same wooden table. Every Friday they said grace before dinner. Their values were simple. You marry once, you honor your family, and you keep your problems private. Reputation wasn't about fame, it was about dignity. Then came Meghan, talking about Los Angeles, auditions, being seen. To the Giulianos, it felt like listening to someone from another planet. At first they thought it was cute, a young girl chasing a dream. But then they realized it wasn't a dream, it was a mission. She didn't talk about family, one friend recalled. She talked about opportunity. Joe's parents grew worried. They saw a woman who wanted to climb, not belong. And in her climb, their son was just the first rung. The warmth faded. The dinners stopped. The silence grew thick. By the time Meghan noticed the distance, it was already too late. The Giulianos had made their choice. They would protect their son, their name, and the silence. Because to them, Meghan wasn't a daughter-in-law. She was a visitor passing through. Joe believed marriage was sacred, something you build your life around. But Meghan? To her, it was just a step on the path towards something bigger. She skipped family dinners, ignored his mother's calls, and spent more time in Los Angeles than in Chicago. It started with small arguments, then came bigger ones. Until one day, Joe's father said something that still echoes in those who remember. That's not what marriage is. But Meghan didn't care. She wanted to be seen, to be known, to rise. And to her, the Giuliano family was in the way. That's when it all started to crumble. The home filled with tension. Conversations turned cold. Joe's parents began pulling back, quietly. And Meghan, she stopped coming around. Soon what had been a love story became a house divided, between a family that believed in silence and a woman who believed in reinvention. And then, the rumor that never died. It started as a whisper, a few words exchanged behind closed doors. Meghan was pregnant. For most families, that would have been cause for celebration, but not for the Giulianos. To them, it was a crisis. They were traditional, private, and terrified of scandal. They didn't believe in airing family matters in public, and this was something they couldn't control. So, according to whispers, they made a decision. Quiet, cold, and final. They would raise the baby, Meghan would move on. No paperwork, no press, no public acknowledgement. By mid-1995, a baby girl was reportedly born, never seen by the public, never listed under Meghan's name. Neighbors remembered seeing a little girl at family gatherings, introduced only as a relative's child. And Meghan? She was gone. She left for college, for auditions, for her future. And in doing so, she left behind not just a husband, but a daughter. To the Giulianos, it wasn't just abandonment, it was betrayal. She didn't walk away from Joe, one of his friends whispered years later. She walked away from motherhood. When the marriage finally ended, there were no public fights, no tabloids, no screaming matches. It didn't explode, it disappeared. No divorce records, no court battles, no trace. Just a quiet annulment filed under sealed orders like it had never existed. According to whispers that drifted out of Chicago, the separation came with one strict condition: silence. Meghan would go on to chase her future, unburdened by the Giuliano name. And the Giulianos, they would protect the child and the secret. It wasn't about money, not really. It was about erasure. Some say the Giulianos paid to have Meghan's name cleared. Others claim Meghan herself pushed to have the record sealed so that nothing could ruin her fresh start before she enrolled at Northwestern. Whatever the truth, the outcome was the same. A clean slate for Meghan, a vanished marriage, a child that legally never existed. The Giulianos, true to their word, went quiet. Not one of them ever spoke publicly. But silence, as they say, has a way of echoing louder than words. Because while Meghan's star began to rise, from college halls to Hollywood sets, Joe's family remained frozen in time. The nursery stayed, the memory stayed, the pain stayed, and that silence, it became their legacy. To the outside world, Meghan Markle looked like a woman who'd built herself from nothing, but to the Giulianos, she was the woman who'd walked away from everything. After the annulment, the family retreated into their home. Neighbors noticed small changes first. The porch light never turning on, the curtains drawn even in daylight, the phone line that suddenly went dead. Then one morning, a moving truck appeared. Within hours, it was gone, and so were they. They just vanished, one neighbor recalled. One day, they were there. The next, the house was empty. Officially, there was no record of where they went. Unofficially, rumors spread that they'd moved overseas, possibly to protect the child's identity. But before leaving, they reportedly sent one last quiet message around their community. A warning: anyone who asked questions, anyone who tried to dig into what happened, would face legal consequences. It wasn't vengeance. It was fear. Fear that the story they buried could one day rise again and undo everything they'd tried to protect. So they vanished completely, taking their silence with them. And Meghan Markle, she moved on, her past neatly folded, locked away like it never existed. For nearly 30 years, nothing. No leaks, no stories, no whispers. The Giulianos stayed silent, guarding the secret like a sacred oath, until recently, somewhere, somehow, the whispers began again. Not from tabloids or online rumors, but from people who once knew the family. One quiet voice broke the silence first. "We didn't hide her secret to protect a lie," they said softly. "We hid it to protect a child." Just 13 words, but they hit like thunder, because that sentence didn't deny the story. It confirmed it. It carried the weight of years of secrecy, and the kind of truth that can no longer stay buried. Now, insiders claim the grown daughter has begun to ask questions. Questions no one is ready to answer. Who was her mother, really? Why did she disappear? Why was she erased from history? And maybe, just maybe, that's what this whole unraveling has been about. Not revenge, not gossip, but reckoning. Because no secret, no matter how carefully buried, stays hidden forever. You can seal papers, you can silence people, you can rewrite timelines, but the truth waits. It lingers in old houses, in locked drawers, in the people who still remember. And maybe that's what haunts Meghan Markle the most. Not the headlines, not the tabloids, but the silence of the people who knew her before the world did. The family that saw through her first. Joe Giuliano never came forward. Not once. He didn't write a tell-all. He didn't chase interviews. He didn't even correct the record. He just vanished, carrying his silence like a promise. And what kind of man does that? The kind still protecting something or someone. Because what if all these years he's been shielding more than his own name? What if he's been protecting that hidden chapter, the one that could rewrite the fairy tale completely? Think about it. What kind of family uproots their entire life overnight? What kind of mother disappears from every record? What kind of story gets scrubbed so clean it looks like it never happened? Only one that someone desperately needed to disappear. For the Giulianos, it wasn't about shame, it was about loyalty. For Meghan, it wasn't about loss, it was about control. And between those two extremes, somewhere in the silence, a whole life hung suspended. To the world, Meghan Markle became a self-made woman, a Hollywood actress, a duchess, a global name. But to one quiet Chicago family, she was something else. The woman who traded belonging for ambition. The woman who walked away not just from love, but from motherhood. And that's the kind of thing time can't bury. The whispers growing louder now aren't just rumors, they're ghosts. Memories clawing their way back to the surface. Old friends, distant relatives, people who once saw the Giulianos at Sunday service. They're starting to talk again. Some say the daughter looks just like her. Others claim she's reached out, trying to piece together a story that was never meant to be told. The family, wherever they are, still won't speak. But one thing has become clear. Silence doesn't erase the past. It only delays it. And now, the past seems ready to speak for itself. Because secrets, no matter how deep you bury them, have a heartbeat. And this one, it's still beating. So maybe that's Meghan's true legacy. Not the fame, not the royalty, not the interviews, but the echo of the story she tried to erase. A daughter, a secret, a rejection that never really ended. The Giulianos were the first to see her clearly, and the first to walk away. Maybe that's why, even after all the fame, all the titles, and all the reinvention, there's still something missing in her story. Something that doesn't fit. Because no matter how high you climb, no matter how many crowns you wear, you can't outshine the truth. It waits, quietly, patiently, in the dark corners of your past. And one day, it knocks. Epilogue. The truth, beneath the glitter. The world sees her as a royal, a celebrity, a success story. But behind that polished smile lies a ghost story. One written in sealed papers and whispered memories. It's the story of a girl who once stood in a small Las Vegas chapel beside a man who loved her, a man whose family saw her too clearly to stay quiet. It's the story of a family that vanished to protect a child, a family that believed silence was safer than truth. And it's the story of how even the most carefully crafted fairy tale can have a forgotten first chapter, because behind every crown, there's a shadow, behind every smile, a silence. Behind Meghan Markle's rise, a past that refused to die. And as the whispers grow louder, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. You can rewrite your story all you want, but you can't erase the people who remember the original.